just because it will help with posterity. A minute to hop on here.
Hey, Rachel, I had a call with Daniel Holbrook this morning at 7:30. So when you have a moment, we can catch up on that.
That sounds great.
Yep.
Hopefully he found it. Let me give him a buzz here.
Okay. I feel like there's been a lot of technical glitches in my week already. Internet was not working this morning. I was like, oh. And there he is.
There he is.
Fantastic.
Wow, that was weird.
Hey, Glenn.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we're very excited. We've got the recording on right now to see what the results are of the rapid design study. So I am going to give you sharing power. Give us a second.
Is that a superpower or a secret power?
It's a superpower.
Okay. Meanwhile, in the chat, I'm putting the link into the study, followed by I go through. Yeah, I went through. And then the access code.
And I'll email those to you afterwards, Commissioner.
Okay, so starting a screen share. Where is the screen share button? There it is. Okay, so basically this is what will happen when you go to the link, is you'll see enter access code for your Harney study. And then the access code is Oregon or Harney access, and that'll bring you to the study itself. Now, there's several ways we can do this. I can flood you with information, or we can talk about the conclusion. And either way, you're going to get flooded with information. But basically what we have here is this is a live website where you see a bold underline. This is a link, and the link will either download a file or open up a window with new information on it. Now, Harney is a pretty interesting community as far as communities that we've looked at. It's extremely rural, and I'm sure you know that. And that causes some interesting issues there. But basically, the first thing that we do is we've got a project overview document. When you download that, it comes through as a Word document. And when you open it, that Word document basically is a guide as to how to use the website. There's no actual information about your study here. It's just sort of like how do we do the studies? What are we looking for? What are our data sources? And how to interpret some of the map functions that you'll see. It's just a basic reading material, especially if you're suffering from insomnia. But that'll help you navigate the website going forward. And then one of the things that we always look at is where available fiber is. Because if you're going to put a project in there, we need some sort of access to the internet. And what we basically see is that we've got a little bit of fiber scattered around there. We've got some Zayo dark haul fiber, and then we've got LS Networks, which is going to become a very interesting, and Charter. These two companies are going to be our major attention going forward, because they're about the only two ISPs that you have in your community that have any quality service at all, although it's pretty localized. Then what we typically do is we'll do what's called a fixed wireless design. This goes on the assumption that you fail in every possible grant application, And then what do we try to do next is we try to put in a cheap fixed wireless network. And the answer basically boils down to is your terrain is kind of good in the valley and it sucks everywhere else. What we basically saw was that within the area where you already have services, you've got some pretty clean coverage, good broadband capacity for wireless. And then once we move into the mountains, everything goes away. It's not terribly conducive to networking, but it can cover a decent proportion of the population if you get forced down that path. Then we also take a look at your grant capacity, meaning how well are you going to fare in an objective grant. And some of the things that we start noticing is that, first of all, your density of households per square mile is incredibly low. That is actually a positive thing when it comes to grant applications. There's nobody can say you're not rural. We've talked to other communities that think they're rural and they're not. You are rural. I think you kind of know that. Now, here's
and in
another.
fact, we always just call ourselves frontier because of the communities that call it that are considered rural, but to us seem almost suburban. You know.
Yeah, I can believe that. I mean, you've basically got 2-mile run. You have one house. It's pretty bizarre. All right. So also in terms of what's called socially vulnerable communities, this is one of the priority schema in terms of funding. 34% of your population resides in what's classified as socially vulnerable communities. Well, that's not good for them. That's good for funding. And then we look at some of the other issues that could be there. Your only real competition out there is Viasat. Viasat has been declared to be broadband. So really, you don't have anything horrible going on there in terms of blocking functions. So that means that you've got some decent concept and viability for grant applications, but it gets more interesting, as we'll see in a bit. We also took a look at what a recommended hybrid would be, and that's where we started seeing some interesting issues. If we start looking at where fiber should be, based upon the available money that we see coming from the BEAD program, these green areas, which are essentially almost where you currently have fiber, start showing up, and there's not a lot of them. What we were looking at was maybe 1/3 of your population was going to be viable from a fiber point of view, given the approximate $6 million that would be allocated by the state. And maybe another 25% would be workable with fixed wireless. So basically on first pass, what we were saying is that for the amount of money that comes through BEAD, you're not going to get very good coverage. But the story doesn't end there. So hang on there. There's some other interesting things that showed up there. So we took a look at this from a financial analysis point of view. And from that perspective, what we basically could see was when we ran 6 different, when we ran 6 different models against the community, we started seeing some very interesting cost figures that were showing up. Basically, from a point of view of borrowing money, it's a no-brainer. You're not going to borrow any money. That's just too much. We started looking at the fiber installation potential here. What we were seeing was that to cover the entire county was going to be something on the order of $60 million. And that's not going to fly very well either. We looked at the cost per household. If we went for 100% fiber, you're at $40,000 per household. And we don't think that's going to work out too well. And then we started looking at the BEAD allocation in terms of these different model costs, looking at it from the point of view of the actual raw allocation plus the match of 25%. So here what you're seeing is the blue is no match and the red is with match. And this is basically putting you into roughly the domain here where you're using all the BEAD funding, and everything to the right of that where we really want to be is not initially going to work out well for BEAD. But there was something else that we noticed as we started looking through this area. All right, so let's just basically take a look at that backdrop here. When we look at where you basically need services and are fundable from the FCC fabric point of view, we can toggle visible there, get rid of the infrastructure. Those areas in a dark orange, are the areas that are going to be BEAD fundable, according to the NTIA guidelines. So a large portion of the community is fundable, but as we were calculating it, it was looking like about $6 million. And then we took a look at one other factor, which is what is your actual BEAD status? And that basically came through by looking at state allocation. Now, see all those areas in red in your county? Those areas are classified either as NTIA high cost areas or socially vulnerable communities. The only area that isn't that way is that little blue splotch right there. So essentially the entire county, almost 100% of the county, is classified as high cost and socially vulnerable. Now, what that means is that you are essentially in a position of asking for and getting more than your fair share from the state. So if we look at it from a fair share being about $6 million or $6,499,000, you could easily be looking at something more on the order of 10 million plus. Now, we don't know the state's formula yet, but we know that you're going to get a lot more. And when we start pushing up that number into that 10 million plus range, then all of a sudden we start shifting our models from the one that we recommended into something that really matters. So these are the models that we looked at, starting with fixed wireless up to the 100% fiber. Now the 100% fiber comes in at about a $68 million project. The one that you could readily afford would be something back here, the C3 model. We thought you could stretch it to maybe 9 million. But now that we've taken a look at the NTIA scoring criteria, it's quite feasible that you could be pushing into the model above what we originally recommended. Now, what we recommended was going to be 21% fiber, 33% fixed wireless, 54% coverage. But we think with the high cost in SVC areas, you're going to be at a 48% fiber, 32% fixed wireless with a net 80% coverage, or about 276 households that are stuck with DSL, Viasat, Starlink, or whatever. Now, that's not fantastic news for those people who are going to be left behind, but from a countywide perspective, that is pretty good news because that means that you've got a reasonable chance at improving your broadband across the board. Now, one of the other things is that you do have extremely high costs of the implementation characteristics for your community. And that's going to be a factor that you're going to have to look at. Now, going back to this BEAD status, let's kind of iron out what it is. The high cost areas are about 3/4 of the community. Socially vulnerable is this section up in this region right here. The combination of the two is going to be a positive for the state funding allocation. There's going to be a positive for any ISP that works with you, meaning you are set up to be a priority candidate in the scheme of the NTIA rules for BEAD. So the problem ceases to become technology and money. The problem now becomes politics. And that's going to be the interesting thing. And Rachel, you're going to have a lot of fun with this one. When we come into the recommendation section, what we're basically seeing here is that it's going to be, you've got a whole bunch of things that are going wrong in the community. You've got low household density. You've got 34% socially vulnerable. You only got 2 ISPs in the county with decent performance, and they're very localized. And the cost of fiber installation is very high, and the terrain and ground clutter really makes us unsuited for wireless solution. Right, so these are bad things, but they turn into positives in terms of the money availability. If you only got a proportional share of the state BEAD funding, you're not going to have much of an impact. However, 3/4 of the county is high cost, and almost the balance of the county is socially vulnerable. So you're darn near 100% priority within the state guidelines and the NTIA guidelines. All right, so we think that we can push you up to about an 80% coverage based on the pricing information we have. And the issue is that you're going to have conversation with Charter LS networks and possibly ISPs that are currently not in your county. But that process should start now, because if they want to have money, they want a county like yours. And the issue is they have to be told that your county exists and that you are a very positive candidate from the BEAD financing perspective. Now, the other side of this is if we look at the whole state of Oregon, there are a lot of other counties that do have high cost areas within the state of Oregon. And what we've basically seen is that there is public comment periods associated with the state's planning process. And the basic rule that we have is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You have to become a squeaky wheel because you have serious problems that are priority problems from both the state's point of view, and they're advantageous from the ISP's point of view. So rather than focusing on, the technologies that could work, and it's basically fiber and smattering of fixed wireless, what it really boils down to is getting Charter and LS networks in a dialogue, and any other credible ISP that would not be those two and not anybody else who's in the county, and try to get their attention. Because now what they're looking at, instead of $6 million, they could be looking at 12 to 18. And that's a very compelling story compared to 6. And then at the same time, the state has these guidelines for funding, which basically say you should be a priority. But considering how most state offices are shorthanded and they really don't necessarily have the data analysis tools that we do, they may be relatively unaware that you do have basically 100% priority in the county. So the second part of the politics is become a squeaky wheel to the state. Public comment, whatever lobbying resources you have, bring them to the table. So this is one of those weird cases that we rarely see, where the biggest issue is going to be political, not technical. And that really is going to be the focal point that you should be having, our Charter and LS networks. And Charter, by the way, is being a good guy this year. So that's to your advantage. I don't know that much about LS networks, but Charter is actually putting additional money into problem areas and fulfilling their RDOF promises. So this is all good. They've been doing that nationally over the last 6 months. And then we have had limited conversations with the state. Most state offices, including Oregon, are overwhelmed by the requirements. So that's the second aspect of becoming the squeaky wheel. They've got a lot of people pounding on the doors saying, help me. Well, you've got the data right here that says, and we are also a priority. So don't forget us. We need that allocation, the higher allocation that we're entitled to.
Okay.
So net, there's a lot of other cool stuff here. But the real issue boils down to getting the ISPs on board and the state on board with what is already factually known about the county in terms of the BEAD funding priorities. Now, there may be additional projects that you can look for other than BEAD, but in terms of the total dollar amount, you might be looking at $1 million here, $2 million there. And you're
Well,
really
there is one thing to throw into the mix here too. And by the way, the BEAD phase 1 proposal is out for commentary. Our team, with Joe taking the lead, is going to be going through that next week and putting together some recommended responses that that elected officials like yourself can take and submit. Because again, squeaky wheel is totally true. But also there is Reconnect funding. We were looking at the Reconnect map recently, and we've just received a cooperative grant with USDA to provide technical assistance to communities to help them secure Reconnect grants, which are up to $25 million. So we need to kind of look at that as well. We're going to be, we can't announce that program until after November because the federal government is wanting us to wait until they can get all their stuff together. And we'll then have an application process or a letter of interest process from communities. So we're transparent about it. But you all were, when we were looking at the Reconnect map, it also seemed like there were a lot of opportunities there. And I think my understanding is that we could use this, the rapid design study, to also kind of take a better look at the Reconnect framework. Correct, Glenn and Nancy?
Yeah, and in terms of the reconnect, the key things would be the SVC and the rurality.
Yep.
And it's something we probably should have a separate discussion. Should you focus on middle mile, or should you just focus on spreading out the deployment? Now that depends on which ISP you get to work with.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. We can definitely do that.
All right, so anyway, lots of other stuff here, but I think that the key points are the ones I've made, and that's where I think our discussion should focus. You can go through the rest of the website. It'll take you about an hour and a half or two to just look at stuff. But
And then from here, we do, we will want to bring your GIS folks and anyone else you want in. We'll do a couple of trainings as well. We can share this recording with them, and then get 1 or 2 trainings set up so they can start to understand how to use the tool better. GIS folks are usually the right ones to be doing this, so.
Wow, I am very impressed with the information that this is yielding, and I look forward to going through it. But this is exactly what we needed. We didn't know how our circumstances can fit into all this. Don't want to be greedy, but definitely want to get what we can get, because this. I think in the next 5 years, whatever we do, that's about all we're going to have for a long, long, long time, and we need to do what we can. And as I sit here and hear about being the squeaky wheel, I'm good when I have a script. I'm not so good when I don't have a script. Usually I write my own scripts, but in this case, you guys helped writing me the script. And we have pretty good state legislators on the state side of things that if I bring them in, they're pretty good. Mark Owens, Representative Mark Owens, our economic development is Representative Greg Smith, and Senator Lynn Finley, unless he's not allowed to run again due to having denied quorum during the session. So anyway, I would love to digest this and figure out and take your recommendation, Rachel and team, on what things I need to be at and who I need to be talking to. And I will definitely look forward to that. But wow, this exceeded my expectations. I'm going to digest it, but this is very, very, very helpful for us.
Patty, one thing I'd recommend is try to memorize the map that I'm showing you right now. I mean, this is the story in one picture. And let me point out a couple of things. I've turned on NTIA high cost areas. I've turned on socially vulnerable communities. They turn red. And here's that little blue spot right there. What you basically have here is 1,757 broadband serviceable locations with a proportional allocation of $10 million without amplifying the high cost valuation. So what that basically tells you is, this is your story. You are eligible, you are qualified, you're indeed CACA, and everybody at the federal level knows that.
Yeah, so I think
Awesome.
honestly it's gonna be us putting together some responses to the BEAD phase 1 planning, and then also making sure to include this portion of your story. So there's going to be things that we're going to respond to generically in BEAD, and then there's going to be things that we'll want to put in for your specific county. And then I think really what will be important is to talk to your representatives, and also because the thing is we don't yet know what their equation is for the high cost areas, right? And that's where the rubber hits the road for you guys getting enough money. Again, though, I don't want to, BEAD is the biggest amount of money that the state has allocated, but there are other federal programs that we will help you look at as well. So Community Connect and Reconnect and a couple of others out there as well.
Great. So good job. Great job. Thank you. I'd like to, when the right time in this little gathering is, to talk about the October 17th meeting that'll be here in Burns.
Yep.
Just
Absolutely.
this is a good opportunity for hopefully having good attendance and participation by the SEOBAT board members, but team members, but also I hope that we can allow chairs around the wall for people who just want to listen in that day, people who are just for transparency as well as, their general information.
Are we
And
going to have a dual in-person / virtual? Because as long as
Right.
that'd be great. So I just want to make sure, Nancy and Glenn, will you be able to attend to do a presentation on these results on, I'm just I silenced my calendar and it fell off my, just trying to pull up the right time. What is our meeting time on the 17th? Sorry.
usually it's 9 o'clock, I think.
Okay.
What was the date again?
October 17th.
I think we have a
Do you have the invite already?
is that the BAT meeting?
Yeah.
Yep, we already have it on our calendar.
Fantastic. Okay, so that we are doing an in-person hybrid meeting, so it'll be like we did with Josephine County recently. So yeah.
And I don't know which of your team will be coming,
Myself and Joe will be there.
Awesome. And yeah, so I don't know. And then the next day you'll be at county court.
Yep.
Perfect. That'll really cover our limited ability to inform the public out here. And I'm really going to try to get whoever's appropriate from the Harney Educational Service District and the schools to see if I can, kind of nag them to come in October, since the equity issues and some of that stuff you talked to so well. I want them to hear that because they'll be key to helping getting that information out to people.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have some school districts where everyone's going to qualify for that subsidy. That's a big deal, right? I mean, so it takes maybe an $80 bill down to something that can actually be affordable, or yeah.
So what time is the county court meeting on the 18th, Commissioner?
It's at 10.
10 o'clock. Okay.
And I can get you guys first so you can be on the road if that's what you'd like.
That would be awesome. I actually have dinner with Daniel Holbrook from the Oregon Broadband office that evening back in Hermiston. So I'll need to hit the road shortly after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know on the 17th after the meeting if you have plans to drive around, see anything or do anything. Unfortunately, I have other meetings that day, and Susan Christensen's going to come as well, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just let us know if you need information on hotels or anything, and we'll get that out to you. But that'll be awesome. And wow, it's not that I try to keep my expectations low in life anymore, but thank you for exceeding my expectations. And yeah, Rachel, if you can just guide me on your advice, we and Joe, on how I can be a good squeaky wheel and I can study up and know what I need to know.
Absolutely.
And feel comfortable doing that.
We'll be working on that next week. We have until I think October 20th to submit those commentary. So yeah, that will be really important. And broadband action teams having multiple members submit is of benefit, so that they're hearing it from different people. So
great. No.
Well, I will, as soon as this recording is finished downloading, I will send it your way probably by first thing tomorrow morning.
Sounds great. Do you need anything from me at this time?
I don't think so. Nope.
I have to tell you, I'm pleased with your reaction to the rapid design study. The first time we ever saw it, we were just, and I've been in this business a long time. And so the first time I saw the rapid design study, I was blown away. I mean, Nancy and Glenn are, they don't need any additional superpowers. They're heroes. I swear.
Absolutely. I'm really delighted because it's like, wow, I know that I guess we only had one other effort on some professional technical assistance on that feasibility study I sent out a long time ago. And I mean, that just, didn't do the job. Plus we didn't follow up. And now.
Well, the thing is, this is adjustable. This is also a tool that we can hand over, that with a sub-licensing agreement to the ISPs that you're working with, and they can use it. And then, the thing is like the assumptions within it in terms of costs and sort of whatnot can be adjusted for their particular situation. And you can go in and change the models. Like it's a living document, and that's what's also really worthwhile about it. It's not a shelfie.
Not a shelfie. No shelfies.
I'm getting some great quotes here.
There you go, Nancy. I'll be a recommendation. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys. Great work, and I feel hopeful, and I'm going to do my part. And without you guys, we couldn't do any of it. So thank you so much.
We'll do it together. We will.
We will. We'll talk soon then. Thank you
All
all.
right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
There we go. That was pretty
Yep.
good.
That was great.
That was pretty good.
Oh,